Hello and welcome to Let's H. I'm Who's Joe, your host. Scroll down and click the read more in the blurb. Follow me on social media and subscribe to me here at YouTube. Become a patron on Patreon for more rewards. This week is a disclaimer of sorts and an introduction of sorts as well. In past, I've encountered some extreme reactions from people, and I wanted to kind of curtail that here. I wanted to kind of head that off. I'm going to be doing some reviews on Angel the series, the Buffy spin-off. But in the past, Joss Whedon's fanboys and fangirls have proven to be some of the most absolutely rabid fandom that I've ever seen in my life, and anybody that says anything negative about any of these series or anything he does or him as a person, get the masses descended upon them like a bunch of mad people. I'm not saying that any of you is like that, but what I am saying is, if you are like that, if you cannot take anybody criticizing him or his work, do not listen to my reviews of Angel. In fact, you may want to turn things off now. Okay, so everybody else still with me? Great. I watched Buffy when it was new. I enjoyed the first couple of seasons. I was about season 3, and season 4 was where I stopped really caring. I thought Angel was a neat premise, but the first season was kind of uneven and they were kind of finding the show. Season 2 was really strong, but unfortunately I didn't get to see a whole lot of it until some time afterwards due to life intervening. Season 3 definitely falls victim to Season 3 syndrome, and if you don't know what that is, please check out my video on Season 3 syndrome, because I explain it in depth there. The show would continue to drift from its premise until finally, mercifully in Season 5, it was cancelled. Not to be outdone, however, Angel pulled a bunch of stunts before the show ended and left a lot of fans with a bitter taste in their mouths. Probably understandably, especially if you'd spent 7 years with Buffy and 5 years with Angel, thankfully overlapping a little bit in there. To me, most of the time, Joss Whedon comes off as a smug, self-congratulatory, sexist douche. He also has some bizarre ideas like womb envy, which is about as stupid as penis envy, and for approximately the same reason. Most of the time, I just get the feeling that he's going through the same exact motions and the same exact characters because people keep praising him for doing something that he never actually really does. Most of his quote-unquote strong female characters, for me, come off as generic characters who happen to be played by female actors. A better example of the kind of writing that I would find to be more worthy of praise is in Dan O'Bannon's script of Alien. The film Alien was cast regardless of people's biological gender. The script was written with no gender in mind for any of the characters. They were named in the script by their family names, their surnames, not by first names. The actors were cast based on how well they suited the characters. This, I feel, is a far better approach than Whedon's often focused attempts to make a character strong because they're female, rather than just having the character be strong and having their gender be incidental. The result, at least in my opinion, tends to be the same one or two characters in these roles, and none of them is particularly memorable, noteworthy, or enjoyable, whether as a hero or as something for the audience to impress themselves upon. To be honest, I just don't think he writes characters very well. He especially doesn't write people very well, and especially not in any sort of interpersonal relationship. And I don't just mean romance, because he's admitted himself he's terrible at romance. Characters, when written by him, tend to come across as stilted and awkward. He can think up compelling situations, it's just that his conveyance of those situations often falls short of what could be expected, or what could do a better job with the characters and the situation at hand. Part of this is his idea of inventing an original vernacular so that the show will be timeless and not dated. Unfortunately, that has a limited amount of effectiveness, especially in a show where the cast are trying to be trendy anyway, so even just the faintest look at their hairstyles or their clothes or something like that will automatically date the show. You can't escape that, really. The best thing to hope for is to defy dating by being timelessly themed and having characters that speak well to the audience who aren't firmly anchored in a certain time period. To be frank, it also just sounds awkward. One of the few things I found funny and took away from Mean Girls was the thing about fetch. Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's never going to happen. That's how I felt every time Joss Whedon's characters would spout some new type of slang as if it was supposed to work, even though it was just something that they were inventing and trying to make sound smooth. It's not going to happen. Stop trying to make it happen. You don't have to use the trendy slang at the moment, but there's plenty of timeless slang that still works today as well as it did 10, 20, or 30 years ago. Your show's going to be dated anyway. You don't have to use a lot of lingo, but at the very least, respect your audience enough to make people speak more believably. But that too is an issue that I have with Whedon's writing. I don't think he respects his audience. He certainly doesn't respect his characters. He often resorts to cheap tactics that are manipulative to the audience, and especially emotionally manipulative. He tends to regard his characters as disposable, and delights gleefully in dispatching with them and gut-punching his audience. It can have a place in a dramatic narrative to do something like that, if it amounts to something and actually affects the characters and makes them better people and develops them more. I can't actually think of any instance where any of that has happened in his writing. It's a stunt that has become trendy by people who grew up on his stuff and think he's the shit because of that. But to be honest, it doesn't work. You're just cultivating resentment in your audience because it's clearly showing you neither respect them nor your characters by treating them as so disposable. It's even worse when characters that are less compelling or less likable end up popping back up magically, and better, more dynamic characters are dispatched with fairly easily and never show up again. I always go back to the thing I've said a lot. Every character is guaranteed to be someone's favorite character. It doesn't mean that they like them particularly as a person or agree with everything they do or say. It's just that they add something to the series. They add something to the story that person cannot get anywhere else. When you kill off a character, or even when you just write them out, you are taking the chance of alienating the people whose favorite character is going to be the one that you choose. You can't always avoid this. Characters come and go. Actors don't want to be typecast. People get tired of working on the same series. However, giving characters the option to recur later is generally a better idea. That having been said, sometimes I can go back and enjoy Buffy and Angel. Buffy's pretty much a write-off after season 4, and especially when Dawn comes on the picture, because who the hell liked Dawn anyway? But Angel's kind of an exercise in missed opportunities and wasted potential. The second season was as good as it got, and it had some legitimately good episodes in there. I think a large part of why I liked Angel so much more was that Joss Whedon was just not as involved in it, with it being a spin-off and everything especially. So the character of Angel was allowed to be a stronger character. Unfortunately, another tendency of Whedon's writing and influence is to make a lot of characters less interesting for the sake of making a singular character or a couple of characters more interesting. That definitely happened with Angel, especially in season 3 of Buffy. It was great that he finally got out and got away from her and could actually be his own person. Given the first season had more of an influence of Whedon's writing, and while I do applaud the singular, focused storyline that started off the series, after that, if you watch it, there's a lot of trying to find the show. He had an idea, but he didn't really have a show. However, by the time season 2 came around, they had definitely found the show. They found their stride. Cordelia, Wes, and Angel worked great together and had great chemistry. Gunn had started to evolve as character too, and was a welcome addition in a rare bit of representation. Unfortunately, as the series went on, the characters ceased to be who they were. Characters were changed dramatically, sometimes in between episodes, and even though Spike could do that in Buffy, and I've even heard it bandied around that Spike syndrome is a thing when a character is one person one week and another character the next week, even Spike seemed to have some consistency when he finally joined the cast, even though season 5, the show was cutting its losses. Angel allowed a different angle into the universe that had been introduced by Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it was nice because overall it was a slightly more mature look at the world around them. Perhaps the heaviest complaint that can be levied at Whedon's writing and the presentation of his universe by other writers is that it's a very facile comic booky kind of feel some of the time. At times it just feels like one of those not particularly well written comic books, where everything's just a little too convenient and too pat. Sometimes this can hit on all cylinders and be exactly the right feel that it needs to be. Other times it's disastrously embarrassing or just boring. But Angel exists as a kind of time capsule of its day. The late 90s and the early 2000s, and what was left over from the 90s gothic scene of loving vampires, creatures of the night, and the supernatural. For a few years, people were just kind of ho-hum about that sort of thing. It's become rekindled in recent days, of course, but it took a while for that to cool down. People had been surrounded by it for years and years and years. And as the WB/CW/whatever are wont to do, they exploited it in every way they possibly could, and people were tired of it by the time it was over. We had the good times, we had the bad times, and I'm here to look at least some of them. But I think we can all agree that Connor was about as crappy as Dawn in general, on the show-killing front. But there you have it. My opinions, disclaimer, and Angel. Come with me on this journey as I watch random episodes and introduce you to the sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes what the hell is this world of a spin-off of a show that most people never would have anticipated would ever be a thing. I'll see you next time. Bye.